Alright, so hello everybody, and so today I'm going to discuss about how to study for NURS 306. So that's a uh, patho in pharmacology one. Okay, so here's how we're gonna do it. So for me personally, I read a book. I read a book like a lot of time. But I don't remember everything in the book. Okay, so here's how it works. So the first thing that you should do is that, you should read the chapter entirely from front to back to front, for the first one or two times. Why do I do that? Because when you read that, you're starting to have a big picture of what is exactly going on in this chapter. What kind of work do you have to know? Now, once you know what kind of work do you have to know, then you read one more time, but this time you pay attention to whichever characteristic that is only for that drug or that drug class, right? And for the adverse effect, you don't have to memorize the why of the adverse effect. You just need to know the list of the adverse effect, if that makes sense. Okay, so for example, cardiac glycoside. Okay, so I have my book in front of me. I'm just gonna tell you how would I read this drug. Okay, so the first thing, let's say I have already read the chapter for 1 or 2 times. I recognize a pattern that this chapter is about treating heart failure, and in order to treat heart failure, you have to know that somehow you must increase the contractility of the heart, and these are the drugs that will help us doing that. Okay, so look at cardiac glycoside. So when I'm reading this, I know it's gonna give you a bunch of therapeutic action, like increase for myocardial contraction. So you should know that this action is important. But when they say increase cardiac output and renal function perfusion, what you should know is that what does that mean? And they have a parentheses right behind that, so you should read these parentheses. So make sure that you understand what the word means first before you even try to memorize what is it. Okay, you have to understand it and then go back and memorize what is it. Okay, and remember this, like detailed thing like what is the onset, what is the duration, what is the peak time. You don't need to know like the exact number, because think about it, the test is only 20 questions. If they ask you like something about this number, number one, this number does not reflect the main idea of what the drug do. Okay, so if they say, okay, so for the pharmacokinetic section, so they say lagosing is available for oral and parenteral administration. 30 to 120 minutes when taken orally, and 5 to 30 minutes when taken IV. You don't really need to know this onset number. Okay. Now, but what do you need to know? What do you need to pay attention to? So like after you read, like that's why I told you like to read the book 1 or 2 times before you go back and memorize it. So that's why you only have to exactly memorize what is the distinct different. Okay. So what makes cardiac glycoside different? Okay, so in this pharmacokinetic section, I'm pretty sure that for esterase and the HCN blocker, they don't have like the pharmacokinetic like the cardiac glycosides. So they say it's treated unchanged in the urine. That's what you should remember, because other drugs don't have it. Okay? And next sentence say, because of this, caution should be exercised in retinal renal impairment because the drug may not be restricted and could accumulate causing toxicity. And so if you just memorize that it's restricted unchangedly and you know that only this drug has this effect, then I think that logically you should think that you must have good renal function in order to using this drug. And so that would be like just memorize the keyword, the main things of what the paragraph say. You have to memorize everything. And the other thing that we have to think about is whenever you see the word narrow margin of safety, meaning that the therapeutic dose is low to the toxic dose, you should know what is the exact dose for that drug. Okay? That's the reason that they say that for this last drug, but not the other one. If they say something narrow margin safety, it means that it's dangerous with the dosage calculation if you don't do it correctly. So pay attention to the dose when you see that word. It's like for every drug in this book, I guarantee you. Because what makes it so special, right? Is that. And so you have to go to this table. I have the drug name, the dose, IV. You don't have to know the user indication. Because why? You know that this drug trying to treat heart failure. That's it. And to treat heart failure, the overall idea of, for the most part of this drug is that you have to somehow slow her rate and increase contractility. So when you're reading this chapter, you must recognize that the theme, something that we're picking over and over again between this last drug, that is what you should know. Okay? But like, that is just how the drug work, or the overall how these drug treating this disease work. Right? Now, contraindication and caution, what you need to know is just the symptoms. Not the symptoms, but just the word. So, for example, I have an entire paragraph of contraindication and caution. Cardiac glycosides are contraindicated in the presence of allergy to any component of disease terrorist preparation, prevent hypersensitivity reaction. So diagnosing is contraindicated in the following condition: ventricular tachycardia or fibrillation, which are potentially fatal arrhythmia, and should be treated with other drug. Heart block causes silent syndrome, which could be made worse by slowing conduction of the AV node. Okay, so why I'm reading this to you? I'm reading this to you so I can show you that what you should memorize. For example, they say, diagnosing is contraindicated in the following condition: ventricular tachycardia or fibrillation, which are potentially fatal arrhythmia. Okay, I'm just finished reading like one symptom, one subset of symptoms, okay? But after you reading this, you just need to know the word ventricular tachycardia or fibrillation. You don't need to know that which are potentially fatal arrhythmia and should be treated with other drug. You don't need to know that. You don't have to memorize it, to be honest. So, pretty much, I just gonna memorize ventricular tachycardia or fibrillation. Okay, next symptom. Heart block or six-sinus syndrome, which could be made worse by slowing the conduction to the AV node. Okay, you don't need to know the reason. Okay, you just need to know the symptom. Okay, so my symptom is heart block or six-sinus. I don't care that it say that what make it worse by slowing the conduction to the AV node. You don't need to know that. You just need to know heart block or six-sinus syndrome. So basically, you just want to focus on the symptoms, not focus on why the symptoms. Okay. And like I say, because if you focus why on the symptom, then think about the pharmacokinetic. Most of the time, that would be the why you need to know about this drug. But when you're getting down to the adverse effect and the contraindication and caution section, you just need to know the symptom, the keyword symptom. You don't need to read the why anymore, to be honest, or at least memorizing it. Okay? You just need to know the symptom. Okay. And that would be that and the adverse effect. So for the adverse effect section, try to pay attention to whichever things that only belong to that drug, or you should know what is it doing. So let's say for a cardiac drug, for a heart failure drug, you should know that for the adverse effect, it's going to be mentioned something about the cardiac system, right? You should know the adverse effect that belong to the cardiac system or belong to the heart failure thing. And that's like the fair game, the minimal that you have to know. But other thing you might want to look out for is like something that only distinct to that drug. Okay? So pay attention to them because, for example, I have two drugs that having like 7 adverse effects in common, but the other 3 adverse effects are not in common. Then how would the professor, or how would the person make the question, would ask question that about this drug? They only gonna be focused on the different. They're not gonna be focused on the same. Because if they focus on the same thing, then you cannot give the answer. So that the mechanism of making test question, they focus on different, what make a drug distinct from other drug. Okay, so for example, for adverse effect for diagnosing, okay, what do I have? I have the adverse effect most frequently seen with the cardiac exercise include headache, weakness, drowsiness, and vision change. A yellow halo around the object is often reported. GI upset and anorexia also commonly occur. Arrhythmia may develop because the glycosyl affect the action, potential, and conduction of the system of the heart. Okay, so think about it. Headache. Can antihypertensive drug have the headache effect? Yes. Can other drug have the headache effect? Yes. Weakness, drowsiness. Yeah, other drug can also have it. But vision changes. Not every drug gonna have it. Maybe you're gonna find one more that having it. One more for the chapter or one more for this today. So vision changes, I would say that, okay, it's different. I would memorize it. Okay. They have sick and anorexia. Well, antihypertensive effect don't have it, but I'm sure that one more drug in this chapter will have it. So you also pay attention, but not your first priority. Your first priority is like what make it different. And so when you try to memorize stuff, try to set up a priority. What do I have to memorize first? and then I can go back later and memorize it at another time, at another speed, at another date, right? But what important, what different, you should memorize first. And so maybe tomorrow on another day, I might go back to the same section and try to memorize the I have said, right? So the first day, or not the first day, but like today, I would prioritize vision changes. Then what do I have next? And so you got the diagnosing toxicity serious syndrome that occur when diagnosing level are too high. Now, if you see something that in a contraindication and the adverse effect repeating again, then it's absolutely a must that you have to know that symptom. So I have her block, atrial arrhythmia. On the contraindication caution, I have ventricular tachycardia and fibrillation. In her block of 6 centers. So if you see something like saying again about this drug, whether it's, so if you see the something contraindicated in the contraindicated and caution section and the adverse effect overlapping together, those symptoms you have to know. Simple as that. And so that and drug interaction. I mean, for this section, you cannot run away from it, to be honest. I know it's very suck, but you cannot run away from it. I mean, but what you can do is that you can make flashcard, or you can make an organizing system. Instead of reading the sentence, you just try to read the symptom and the drug related to that symptom. So diagnosing clinically important drug-to-drug interaction. Okay, so I'm gonna read this. So there is the risk of increased therapeutic effect and toxic effect of diagnosing if it is taken with verapamil, amiodarone, quinidine, erythromycin, tetracycline, or cyclophosphamide. So when you're making flashcard about diagnosing, about what drug contraindicated with diagnosing, you should make it this way. Increased therapeutic effect. If taken with variable, you just do the resveratrol or amiodarone, quinidine, erythromycin, tetracycline, or cyclophosphamide. Now on this list, for specifically for this drug, if you see the pattern, I think at least 2 of them are antibiotic. This is, I cannot pinpoint to you of how I know this, but I just know it. If you don't have like a background, or if you don't have a good foundation or a good background or a drug, then I would not assume that you would know that. But try to junk this out. And plus, there's not like a lot of, I know that there's a lot, but like for this thing, you have to memorize it. Because with the drug interaction, I cannot tell you to run away from it. That's like the first section that you have to memorize entirely. And then the second section would be the food to drug interaction. What foods should not be taken with this drug? Try to find that out too. And so it does not mean that, so if you have read the first time, you have slain over it, try to look at the entire page of the book instead of just looking at the individual section of the book. So if I happen to look at the entire page of the book, I would see the box 44.6 focus on herbal and alternative therapies. And from this box, I will know what food I should not take with diagnosing. Now, sometimes they list it in a hidden box this way. Sometimes they just say out. Clinically, food to drug interaction. And usually, like for Usually red fruit juice is gonna be the one if you see it in the answer. Usually that will be in the one. I don't know about how farm to work, but if you use scan of the book, and usually red fruit juice is the one that pop up the most. It maybe hormone rock sometimes contraindicated with red fruit juice, and so that's another free piece that you don't have to read the book. But I somehow scan it and I know it, so I tell you that. Usually, if you see the option, one of the answer in the option in red fruit juice, chances are that would be the correct answers. And also another thing I would like you to do is like when you do the practice question, try to think of it like a test, right? So I mean the first goal is that you just have to complete the assignment, don't get it out of the way. But after that, you can do more practice question on the point. And here's how I do it. After like, I get my mastery level out of the way, I do like 20 question quiz over all of the chapter that gonna be tested on. And I think that would be sufficient, because every time you do it, you start stimulating like the real environment, and make sure like you close the book, you don't open the book. You do the question, and then you look back what you get wrong. And the good thing is that they will find the pages of what you get wrong, so you can go back to this book and read it again. And I think that would make what it stick. But remember this, don't like ever stop at the mastery level that they require you to stop at. I don't think that that's sufficient. Because what happening is that when you stop at that level, what I found out is that you don't have a lot of select all that apply question. And sometimes on the quiz, especially for our quiz, it's like 20 questions. You miss 3 or 2, or you low A or B. And I don't want that. I want you to rate like I want an A. I would like to get an A. I'm gonna rate for an A. I'm not gonna rate for a B or a C. Okay? And so think about it. You read a chapter 1 or 2 times just to scan it, just to get a good picture of it. And then you go back. You pay attention to the little things that I told you the entirely what you need to like actually focus on, memorize on. That's your 3rd time of reading the chapter. So you have read the chapter now 3 times. And then you do your practice question. When you do your assignment, just to get the assignment out of the way, I'm sure that you're gonna miss something, and that's okay. Fine. You're just gonna have to go to the page that they provide you and go back. And so this now is like a 4 times pumping at you. And after you do all of that practice question, you're trying to get into like the highest mastery level possible, like level 8. I wonder how many questions have you get wrong? And how many pages have they pointed out to you that you get the material on that page is wrong? And how many times have you go back? And for me personally, I would say not entirely of the chapter, but I would say that what I missed, what I don't understand when I keep doing these things, I would say that for the chapter I would go back and forth and read it entirely. Not entirely. I love to skip like all the pauses, the little bosses. I love to skip them, but don't skip the prototype boss, because that's important. Like that's like your zit that you have to know, because otherwise but don't worry about the time of the effect. So don't worry about the onset, the big or the duration. Very much don't worry about it. So they have the prototype summary box. You have to know like you don't need to know the half-life. Really, you need to know it. But you need to know the action and the adverse effect. I mean, these products are super helpful for the adverse effect, but the sad thing is that they don't have the contraindication or the caution. They don't have it. But if you just take a quick review before your exam, you should use these poses. And so after you go over the chapter for so many times, I wonder that you at least must have retained something. I'm not guaranteeing that you're gonna retain everything, because you and I are different human beings. But I would pretty sure saying that you should retain at least around 70-80% of the stuff, and plus, like, when you do like study for pharmacology, you have to spread out. There's no way that I can memorizing 20 plus rock in one day. That's not gonna happen. Okay, you just have to give it some time, give it some patience, and spread it out. Think of it this way: every day you try to memorize around 5 rock, 7 rock. That 5 rock for me is like enough. Okay, like when you read through them 5 rock, I'm sure that you're gonna love to go back again and again to read just those focus and those 5 rock for one day. Okay, don't jump too fast. If you don't memorize something, then you better jump back right away. Because if you continue jump on, you don't even remember the new rock, but you also don't even remember the old rock. And so just study it until you memorize it before you move on to another group of rock or another 5 rock. It depends on your limit. But for me personally, one day I would memorize my math is like 5 rock, and I think that should be like everybody math. After like you understand, you memorize the rock, you know what you're doing, try to practice question, they're gonna give you some feedback, and based on those feedback, you go to the exact pages that they tell you to go back, and you look at it. So, to be honest with you, for me, my nose is like my book, and my book is like my nose. I'm a super lazy person. I don't take any notes. But like I told you, all you do is that you just have to memorize the symptom and the adverse effect. You don't have to remember the why if it's beyond the pharmacokinetic section. If anything beyond the pharmacokinetic section, you don't have to know the why. You just know that the symptom need to happen that way. And whenever you see something that I already mentioned for that work, you should review that. Okay? And good luck and enjoy studying pharmacology. Like the more you repeat it, so for me I repeat it like every morning, that I wake up very early in the morning, like 6 a.m. I do my pharm run. Every day like that, and I can memorize the rock, and if you do it my way, you even have some extra time before the exam to do it. Just notice every day, memorize 1 rock, 1 to 3 or 5 rock. It depends on your limit, and you can do it. Just do it every day. If you forget something in the middle of the week, go back to it. Okay, that's the only thing that you need to do. And also, the study guide is just for a quick review. Okay, don't do the study guide. Okay, but based on the study guide, if you look at the study guide and you just blank, then that's a scary thing. But if you look at the study guide and you're like, oh, I know this, I know where I read it, I know what is it, then you do not need to like physically doing the study guide. And that is like my advice for you, because I don't want you to study guide doing the flashcard, writing it down, taking a bunch of notes, and then don't have time to study for it. But I know some people are doing flashcards, some people love taking notes, some people love to write because that's the only way they remember it. But if you're a person that just really focused, reading word by word, not word by word, but like just focus on the word and memorize, I think that's like the best thing, best gift, and you should continue doing that. Okay, but make sure that whenever you study rock, just like be super focused in that 1 or 2 hour block every day. Like you cannot say like I only study for 1 or 2 days a week. I don't think that will work out. But every day, 1 hour at least. Or if you have time on the day that you don't have lab or you don't have open lab, or even in your waiting time. Okay, so buy a small binder, just like me. I take the section that I need to read for the next exam, and then I put on this binder and I bring it with me to school. I read in the morning while I'm waiting for everybody to come. I'm reading in the lunch, so if you don't know, I only have it 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I stay at where I stay to eat lunch. And then after that, I just go back, read the book. Okay, so just remember this: your meal, your lunch, instead physically taking some work into your brain. Do it as much as possible. Repetition is the key, to be honest. And that would be that. And good luck and enjoy your studying.